Welcome to this bonus episode of Art Heals All Wounds. I'm curious, how many people sing when they're at home? Especially now, since many of us are spending so much time at home. I sing a lot. In fact, I sing for much of the day. It used to annoy my partner just a bit. He's not a singer. Most of my singing now, though, involves songs with the lyrics changed so that they're about our dog. So he's gotten more into my singing and will even sing along sometimes. You know how Julie Andrews sings My Favorite Things in The Sound of Music? I have a song that keeps going through my head that's sort of like that. Last year, I recorded an interview with Quincy Griffith and Lukman Frank, two musicians and close friends, who recorded an album in 2020. Their song, Gonna Be Alright, is on a loop in my head as we head into year 3 of the pandemic. I find this song to be contagiously optimistic. I want to reshare this episode with Quincy and Lukman in the hopes that their conversation and their music will uplift you too.
As a people, got a right to be free. Brothers and sisters, you can take it from me. All of our futures are dependent upon working together to be all for one. Only a rising is a brighter day. We got to save the world for the children's sake. Don't wait for tomorrow. There is no time to waste. Sisters and brothers with a human race. Gotta live while living, gotta keep on loving. For the world we live in, gonna rise up above it. Gotta keep up the fight, yeah, we must unite. When we all get together, it's gonna be alright. 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 It's gonna be alright.
Hi, Quincy and Lukman. Thank you so much for being on the show today. You have a new album coming out that I want to talk about later in the interview. But before we do that, can you introduce yourselves and just tell me a little bit about what you do? Lukman, why don't you go first?
My name is Lukman Frank, and I am a singer, songwriter, performer, and I perform all over the place with a lot of different bands and on a lot of different projects, recording projects as guest artist on different folks things in the past and present. That's what I do, and my main thing right now is collaborating with this man Quincy on this album.
Okay, well, Quincy, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Great, and thanks for having us, first of all.
Sure.
I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, my name is Quincy Griffin. I am primarily a composer and producer based out of Oakland. I grew up here in the Bay Area, grew up in Berkeley and went through Berkeley public schools and have lived in between Oakland and Berkeley my whole life. I'm a saxophonist. My primary music work in recent years has been composing for film and TV, mainly for documentary. And as part of what I do as a producer and composer, I love working with artists, and Lukman and I have developed this collaboration where we've become really great friends, like brothers almost, and have developed a relationship where we are able to work together to write and produce material and do something that we both are really happy with and really love to do. So that's kind of what I do in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I'm from Berkeley too. Let me just say that. Proud Berkeleyan, born and raised.
Mm-hmm.
Third generation.
All right.
Third generation.
Yeah.
I'm second generation.
I'd love to hear how you both got started in music. Lukman, when did you start performing, or when did you know that music was going to be something you wanted to do professionally?
Well, yeah, I think that probably started in high school. Yeah, I had been doing a lot of private things in my bedroom where nobody could hear. private recordings and whatnot. But when I got to high school, I got involved with a singing group, kind of like a Boys to Men type of singing group, where we did a lot of our own writing and even choreography, dare I say. So that's when I started practicing being a songwriter and realized that maybe, hey, I can write too, We don't have to, depend on other folks to write things for us. And so we started developing songs ourselves there. And then, things just flowed from all the way back then.
What about you, Quincy? When did you get started with music?
As a kid, I had piano lessons like everybody else, classical piano, and I hated it, never wanted to practice, and it was torture. And then when I went to college is when I really got seriously interested in music. I was doing an anthro major in UC Santa Barbara, and then we did a summer abroad in Spain, and I had a roommate that was this hippie guy who brought his guitar, and the whole time he was just kind of like busking and going around playing Grateful Dead songs, and I was like, wow, this looks like a lot of fun,
Yeah.
So I just kind of decided over that summer, like, okay, when I get back, I'm gonna pick up the saxophone. I'm gonna start really learning about music more. So that's kind of what I did. Got back and then just full on into it, practicing 4 or 5 hours a day and then taking every music class I could and then ending up minoring in music. And then after college, after I'd already had my degree, I went back to Cal and then took all the music classes I could take there. And then after that, went to Hayward State and took all the music classes. So I just kind of really, once I got into it, I really just sort of ran with it and learned as much as I could.
Yeah.
And let me take it back even further on my end.
Okay.
My mother was a singer in a group called the New Generation Singers. And they were kind of singing around in the 60s with in concert with people like the Isley Brothers and stuff like that. So also when I was a child, she would have me and my sister harmonizing with her in the car all the time and writing songs with her, sort of like children's songs that I still know to this day. And then when she had a major event in her life where she separated from my father, she wrote a song about it, recorded it with my uncle, who is a guitar player, and that showed me you can write songs about your life. And actually that song is on this album.
Really?
Yeah, it's got Quincy's touch on it now. But yeah, it was written by my mother and my uncle.
What is the name of that song?
It's called Leaving for Living.
Okay. I
Yeah.
listened to the whole album. I loved it, but now I have to go back and see if I can find that song.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So it sounds like the two of you have been collaborating for a long time. How did you meet? How did you start collaborating? Tell me the story of you two as a songwriting and producing and performing duo.
Q, I think we knew this. We knew the same people way back when. I have a feeling. I know one of my friends was a good percussionist guy DeShalis. He kept telling me I need to meet Quincy. This was when I was performing with a group. What was that? That was Project Reconnect, and that was like a big group of artists. And we would do Afro-Cuban, Afro-Haitian music, and there were dancers, and I was a percussionist in that group. And just a lot of great people involved in that group. Through that group, I met Guy. Guy was telling me about Quincy. I don't know how me and Quincy finally linked up, but this is probably over 15 years ago when we met.
Yeah, I think it was maybe longer than that. I think I met Luke Mon. I had a studio in Berkeley. And there was a band called Crown City Rockers. I think I was mixing a couple songs for their album. We needed some vocals done or redone. And so Luke Mon came in for that. And I think that's where I first met him. And, once I got over his weirdness, once we got past that, we developed a working relationship and friendship over the years. And we had done a bunch of stuff together. He came in and did vocals on different rap projects and
Yeah.
and stuff like
I
that.
had to get over his weirdness too,
Yeah,
for the record.
Yeah. And we had a mutual. Oh well.
Two weird people getting over weirdness, come together in the name of weirdness.
Yeah. That's pretty much it. And I think maybe Paul Baker.
Paul Baker.
There's another producer, songwriter, Paul Baker, who I have known since maybe childhood, and Lukman was working with him.
Lots of collaboration
And so,
with him.
yeah, there might have been a connection there too, or maybe we found out about that later. And Paul Baker is a co-writer
Yeah.
on 2 of these songs that are going to be on the album.
Yeah, and I think one of those songs, Sure Love, is kind of what made Quincy bring a tear to his eye when he heard that. And he said, okay, we need to do an album together. He was so inspired. Okay. I've never seen a grown man cry. It's not pretty, but
Tell me the name of that one again.
Sure Love. So that's probably the first one me and Quincy went seriously in on, in terms of getting Quincy going in on the arrangement and sort of putting a real his producer's touch on that one. Is that accurate?
I think so. That was a while ago. I think there's a couple. I think there were a couple of Paul songs out of a bunch of material that they had done, and there were a couple that I was like, yeah, I want to be involved with this one. So there was Sure Love, and there's one that you haven't heard yet called, I believe the title's going to end up being I Wish. Years ago, we brought in a band, a rhythm section, and started building those up. And then when we got around to actually saying, okay, we're going to sit down and write this album having these certain themes and a certain style, we kind of looped back to those old sessions that had been around and said, okay, we can make these work with this project that we're currently doing. And so that's kind of what happened.
The story that I've heard about this album is that it's a little bit thanks to the COVID pandemic and you guys having some time on your hands that this album has even been made. Can you tell me the story of that? What were you both doing? And then did you just pivot and say, okay, we're going to make this album now? How did that happen?
Yeah, I think pre-COVID, we were able to work together a lot, but I think a lot of times Quincy was working to kind of pull me out of whatever I was involved in and make me focus on the project that we were talking about. And we did have a moment in 2017 where we went in with 4 songs that just came from our writing, and we grabbed some key musicians and we thought about it, who we wanted, and so we were able to get that done. Then after that was like in over the course of maybe a week. The studio session was like a day, but we had rehearsals and stuff before that. And then after that, then here comes life again, getting in the way of schedules and a lot of energy from Quincy dragging me into the studio and stuff like that. But then comes COVID, and it's like, guess what? We can focus all the way on this now. So that plus everything was there. The resources were there. The folks that we wanted had time. They weren't on tours. They weren't involved in a whole lot that they're usually involved in. So we were able to get that same crew that we had in 2017 back into the studio during this COVID period and back focused on this project, and we were able to finish it off with them.
Yeah, well, you have a pretty big sound. It's not just like you, Lukman, on vocals and a guitarist and a bass player and drums. This is not what we're talking about. Can you guys talk about the style of this album?
Well, I mean, for us, we're very intentionally and very clearly emulating a lot of our influences, which are vintage soul. And that's sort of the intention of this album is like you could almost kind of plop the core of what the sound is into like 1972, 73. Like it's Al Green, Curtis Mayfield, Bill Withers. It's like those are the sounds that we grew up with, you know. I mean, for me, my childhood album is, you know, Songs in the Key of Life. That's the Stevie Wonder. That is my kind of my childhood. That is that and like some of the Marvin Gaye stuff. And then if you go, my parents were listening to Supremes and stuff like that, which gets a little earlier, Diana Ross and the Supremes. But so we very much were in this soul, sort of vintage soul vibe. And we were very intentional in terms of embracing that, in terms of subject matter, in terms of tones, in terms of instrumentation. At the same time, we have, we've written R&B songs together over the years, which are a little bit more contemporary. And we also we grew up on like hip hop and drums that are, banging drums and big bass. And so there is some of that, but we didn't want to go the route of like the whole album being kind of retro with hip hop drums. We didn't want to do that thing, which I think is what is done quite a bit. We sort of were like, let's go all the way with it. Horn arrangements,
string arrangements,
strings, church, a lot of church influence, organ and Rhodes and Hammond, and we had a
B3, which is the same thing,
P bass, for a bunch of the songs, which is kind of a specific sound.
Yeah, and at the same time, I love big albums. I love like that classic Seal album. I love Sarah McLachlan albums. I love what's that woman that's saying, isn't it ironic? It's like rain.
Allison. Oh my god. Okay.
What did you say?
Alice? No.
It starts with an A. Oh my god, I forgot her name.
I know, that's so weird. She's so iconic.
Yeah, right. But big. So I like 6-8 time signature songs where you can get into that big sound that I feel reaches a lot of people. And then I think, just like Quincy said, it's focusing back in on like Stevie Wonder, and also not to mention the Beatles.
Yeah.
All these folks who make songs and arrangements and use chords that reach a lot of people. That's kind of the focus. And I have to say the focus of this album is due to, Quincy keeping a vision, because if it was up to me, we'd have, a rock song, we'd have a folk song, we'd have all kind of stuff and throw it all together and call it a day, but keeping a vision, keeping a focus and a specific sound that can carry through the whole thing is why you have a producer.
And I don't win all those battles.
Alanis Morissette, by the way.
Alanis Morissette.
There you go.
Yes.
So the focus for you was really to have a sound of a soul, like a classic soul album then.
Absolutely.
It very much so, with whatever other quirks are, it's like everybody has their own little history and sort of database of what they think is good and what sounds good to them. And so, it's very intentionally at its core a soul album. But like you said, Beatles, we were very, very much influenced by the Beatles, and particularly with like a couple of the songs have some string stuff and tuba and things like that, where it was like, was really, we really appreciate a lot of the things of Beatles. That's in there for sure.
But it all goes back to soul, really.
Yep. Yeah.
It all goes back to soul, so yeah.
When you're talking about the intentionality behind writing the songs, what else are you talking about?
We had specific discussions about what we want to put out. First of all, we were like, we want to make stuff that we think sounds good, that we would like to hear, because we don't necessarily hear what this being put out into the world right now at the moment in the way that we're doing it. We wanted to put together stuff that we like to hear. We also wanted to put together something that had positive message, about love. I mean, a quote that I kept going back to, and I think it's a John Coltrane quote. It was to convey spiritual messages of universal love through music. So, I mean, you also have to include, we had some Bob Marley influence, in a way, which also goes back to soul. But, Curtis Mayfield, Bill Withers, Al Green, folks putting out messages of love, in a soulful way. That's what we wanted to do.
Yep. And just positivity. There's some just really kind of dark stuff going on in music right now, and a lot of dark stuff in the world that we have been dealing with in the last 4 years or so.
Yeah.
And so as part of the pandemic, it really honed in on that. Like, okay, we need to really be focusing on things that are just putting a positive energy out into the world. Being a parent is also of teenage kids. I'm much more kind of in that battle of like, why are you listening to what you're listening to, and how is this affecting you? Because there's a lot of really, really, really kind of messed up stuff that the kids, I know my kids, are listening to, and they think it's cool, and promotion of drugs and misogynist stuff and violence, and just profanity, So we're very intentional about that. I don't believe there's a negative line in the album, but maybe someone will surprise us and find something.
Right, and that goes to me, right, or hear something that we didn't intentionally mean to put together there. But I think it goes on so many levels too, because it starts with our relationship, which is super positive, and like Quincy said, it's like a brother to me, And so when you're working with somebody like that, you get like the best. We get the best out of each other.
Mm-hmm.
Then you start working with who are you bringing in to be the musicians, and like all the musicians we brought in, they come with this power. They are some powerful people, and they bring these elements to the recording, and it just, everybody that has a hand on it has that intention and that power behind them, this positive thing with them, and plus the big talent. So, and people we know and really like,
Yeah.
and dare I say love.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so curious because it was a dark time. It was a dark time for a lot of people emotionally, psychologically. Did it help either of you, both of you, to be working on something that was positive? I mean, the lyrics are definitely positive, but a lot of the music is also, it either makes you feel deeply or it makes you want to dance. So I'm curious, what effect did that have on you to be working on that as opposed to some other type of project?
Yeah. I mean, I got to say that the pandemic was rough, and a lot of people really had a very, very hard time. That was a struggle, but I think the struggle of the last presidency, and I remember we were hanging out when that election went down, and like just the struggle of that it in my mind was the biggest crisis. It was just like, it was the stuff that was happening on a daily basis in terms of the racism and the outright hatred was mind-blowing in a way that I never expected something like that to happen. I think a lot of the where we were going in terms of songwriting, I think a lot of it was influenced by that. The pandemic, I don't think the pandemic itself had an impact in terms of feeling like this is a dark time that we need to talk about. It wasn't so much, I mean, we were talking a little bit about the struggles that were coming out of that, but in the pandemic, I felt like at least we have the release of getting this guy out of here, that happened at the same time. Because for me, it was at a point where I'm like, okay, where can we go
Right.
to get away from what's going on here? Pandemic is a natural thing, and it's a little bit more easy to accept, I guess.
Yeah, and for me, the pandemic was a time for, as much as a lot of negative things happened during the pandemic and a lot of people were affected negatively, it was also a time for a lot of people to reflect and reset and understand and try to, recalculate where we should be going, and I think for me, that definitely was that moment. And, me and Quincy, we sit around and talk about politics and the world and sort of the things that are affecting us and everyone around us, and how can we address it. And I think, this project, it has been a way to address all of that stuff, and to have one of the ways in which we can deal with it and do something about it, and put something out there that hopefully can have that effect on some other people, that they can feel what we've put into it. It's supposed to address those feelings, that come from all of the things that are happening in the world.
And that is a lot of what we're writing about, like definitely George Floyd, all the killings that were happening, those really, really were heavy in our conversations as we were writing this. And I think that subject matter I think a lot of lyrics kind of are addressing that, and like addressing, bringing people together. Let's get together. It's like, if you really believe that another person of color is your enemy, especially as a person of color, it's just so out there that, people have been deceived enough to fall for that. That's kind of a lot of what we're trying to talk about. Like,
the divide and conquer game.
Yeah.
But so to be able to work on something that I wholeheartedly feel is an attempt to address these things felt great. It felt like I wasn't sitting around wallowing in all of the negativity that's happening in the world. It felt like this is taking that energy, using it as a catalyst to try to do something to address it. And I think when you're on that end, whatever you're doing, whether you're out protesting or you're starting nonprofits or doing podcasts, you get you get to have that other side of the coin, which is the energy of doing something,
And I think to your question, I know we're kind of beating around the bush to the answer here, but the pandemic did allow us to get in and have the time to do that. And I think we're very grateful to have a project to sort of keep us occupied when things were very, very up in the air and not knowing what was coming next, and trying to figure out, like, okay, is this going to kill us all?
Right.
Can we go, whatever. We're kind of locked away. And, I was fortunate to have a documentary that kept me super busy in the very, very first couple months. And I was very happy for that distraction. And then it all kind of timed out where Luke Mon had become more available, and I was like, okay, this is it. Let's get this done.
Yeah.
And so that was great, being able to do that. It was difficult.
Plus we were able to keep other people that we really like working on the project as well, and getting some income, and
Yeah, that's fantastic.
getting stuff on their schedules. Yeah.
I mean, this is supposedly what writing music is all about and all this stuff. But here is a situation that's, you know, hopefully is not going to, it hasn't happened in a century. Hopefully it's not going to happen again anytime soon. But you really took this situation and put into practice what the whole myth of being a musician is, which is you're able to transform energy into art, into music.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. It was definitely a struggle. Our whole like way of writing together, sitting in the room, we couldn't do that for a while. That was really challenging, you know? And so for a while it was like, okay, let me take my keyboard outside. We were sitting outside, just keyboard, vocals, working out lyrics or whatever, working out melodies. And that challenge actually, I think, improved us quite a bit in terms of our abilities to write together. But when we finally got this second batch of material that we did for the album, it really felt like, you know, what it felt like having my children when they were born. Like such a relief. Like we had to push so hard, like get everything in place and get everybody, and like, how do we rehearse the band? And then we finally got in the studio, and I'm listening to playback, and I actually I emailed the whole band, and I'm like, yeah, it actually like made me cry a little bit, you know, when I heard the song, and they were I think it was an LJ solo, one of the piano solos. I'm like, actually like brought a tear to my eye, and I think their response was like, oh, okay, cool. But I really meant it. Like it really was an emotional thing for me. So hopefully that some of that power is conveyed to the listener.
Yeah, so many challenges we faced too. I mean, because of COVID, you know, we had an engineer had to, you know, call last minute out on us, and so we had to cancel out. He canceled out on us last minute because of COVID exposure. So then we had to work with an unexpected engineer, and there were some challenges in the studio with that, but he came through, and another person came through for us in the clutch to, I mean, there were a lot of hurdles to overcome, but we did overcome them. And they also kept your mind going. Okay, we got all these hurdles to overcome. So you couldn't have a lot of time to really be thinking about, you didn't have a lot of space to dwell on sadness.
No,
we got immediate things to deal with. We need to overcome to get this thing done. You know?
I mean, some of the hurdles were ridiculous. Though. I mean, we're trying to rehearse. Normally we just rehearse in my living room or whatever. Yeah. But then it's like, okay, we can't all be inside. So like, okay, how are we going to rehearse? And I'm like, okay, we'll just rehearse in my front yard.
Right.
And so everybody's set up to rehearse in the front yard, which is great that they're willing to do that. And it was cold. I think this was in the winter. This was like November. Yeah. And then I think we had another lockdown. Like you weren't allowed to be together even outside.
Yeah.
And so then it was like, okay, well, what do we do now? I don't think we can rehearse in the front yard because the neighbors might call it in and not be happy. So then we're trying to find a rehearsal space. Everything's shut down. And then I don't think it would get Soundwave in trouble, but guy at Soundwave, it was like a Wild West over there. He's like, yeah, come on in. We had a big room, so we just were able to rehearse at Soundwave Studios.
Big love to Soundwave for being there for so many musicians to do their thing. Yeah.
The band does sound amazing, so if it ever happens again, you can come play in my front or backyard.
Oh yeah,
I'm volunteering it right now.
All right, sounds good.
And nobody in my neighborhood will turn you in. That is for sure.
That's the beauty of your neighborhood. I won't call it out, but I'll
call it out. It's East Oakland.
Yeah,
the best. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. If you had to come up with what you're taking away from this project when you're going to write something wonderful for the liner notes or something, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, something along the lines of growth overcoming hurdles, transforming. I like what you just said, basically transforming energy. All of those big lessons came through for me in terms of what music does. I mean, we got motivated to do all of it. This is a pretty big undertaking. And it took a lot of energy, especially from this fella here, Quincy. And music motivates that kind of energy. And so the power of music to transform.
Yep. Yeah, I think so. Transformative power of music. I like that.
Yeah.
Love. It's about love. A lot of it's about love and loving each other and, you know.
And he never, like to hear him talk all this mushy stuff, like this is the power of music.
Yeah.
It is the power of
It's
music.
got this dude crying and talking about love and stuff. He never does that,
That's true. I'm not like... Yeah.
The album's not quite out yet. When do you think it will be finished and out?
The album's essentially done. We're ready to master. But I think the idea is we have one video for one of the songs that's almost done, thanks to Morgan Schmidt.
Film
and
Site
Film Site
Productions. Beautiful video.
Major, 5-camera shoot, and just totally... He's somebody that got really excited about the project and
Will Nold on the
board.
editing.
Yeah, I saw the video.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful, and it does justice to the song.
Yeah. Right?
And a lot of the
Yeah.
feelings that you're talking about that you want to convey. That's the song I heard first that made me feel very joyful and made me want to get up and dance.
Yeah, that was, they did a great job on that video. That song we feel like was very fitting for the time. That's going to be all right. That's the song that felt like it made sense, for right now to get that out. Things might look a lot better, 4 or 5 months out from now, which is it's scary to think we might push back that long, but I really feel like the live performance and gigging to support this album is really, really important, especially given all the amazing musicians who can play this stuff down live incredibly.
And we've also made an updated old school soul cohesive album in a time where people are just making singles and releasing them out in digital formats. So we're trying to figure out how to maneuver what we made with the times we made it in.
Yeah.
And how best to present that, because you don't want to give everything these days out. Everybody has free access to it on Spotify. They listen to it, it fizzles out in a month or whatever, and you want to keep momentum going. There's all these things to consider, and we have to consider.
Yeah. We're in the territory where that neither one of us knows what we're doing, basically. That's the tricky part. But we're very happy with the product, so we feel like we can. People seem to be very excited about it and want to get involved, so that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask where people can find out more about you, but I think lukemanfrank.com.
Yes, that should be by the time this airs up and running, and maybe have a couple of samples of the music on it.
And QuincyGriffin.com.
QuincyGriffin.com.
LukemanFrank.com, LUQMAN Frank.com.
We should shout out some of these. The lineup of musicians is kind of mind-blowing in terms of who they are. Vernon Ice Black, guitarist, played with Herbie Hancock, was the musical director for the Spice Girls, has all this huge industry connection. You have LJ, what's LJ's last name?
Holloman.
And he's
Bad
just
dude.
beast keyboard player. I know he plays with Fantastic Negrito right now. Tiny Lindsay.
Michael Tiny Lindsay on bass.
Big Thomas on drums,
Oh,
another
man.
great guy. Mike Alberg's on some tracks, keyboard player. I think he's Guapoles. Josh Jones on percussion.
Oh, yeah, Josh
just
Jones.
Bay Area legend.
Thomas McCreary on drums. He's worked with all kind of people too, and he's a producer in his own right.
Omega Ray.
Omega Ray,
Kamiko Joy on vocals.
We got Pep Love on a song
Love
from
from
the
the
High Road
Hieroglyphics.
Crew.
Yeah, just
Oh,
great
man.
lineup.
Man, and then some of the earlier songs, we got Darian Gray on drums, Lauren Lieber on guitar,
Steve Hogan.
Steve Hogan.
Great. These are all like just great musicians. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I've been very fortunate. So shout out to everybody.
yeah. Some of the baddest musicians definitely in the Bay Area and probably in terms of most of the planet. Dare I say.
Well, it definitely sounds like it. That is for sure.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to how the album comes out. I love the idea of the live performances, but I
Yeah.
understand it might be hard for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having us. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You know, I was planning to get some more insults in on Luke Bond.
Dang. I had
Couldn't
some
really-
written down.
Couldn't figure out where to place them.
You gotta
so
be
I gotta
smooth
work on
about
that.
these things. Can't find the rhythm.
Yeah, my rhythm.
For
that.
That's what it is. You're messing up my rhythm.
God.
We'll have to have you back on another time. It'll be the insult episode.
Oh yeah.
Let's do that. Let's do that.
Love one another, each and every one. Look a little closer, not from so far away. There is so much beauty in the world today. Another one's color might be different from you, but it just makes the picture much more vibrant and true. Gotta live while we're living, gotta keep on loving. For the world we live in, gonna rise up above it. Gotta keep up the fight, yeah, we must unite. When we all get together, it's gonna be alright. We as a people got a right to be free. Brothers and sisters, you can take it from me. All of our futures are dependent upon working together to be all for one. Only a rising is a brighter day. We got to save the world for the children's sake. Don't wait for tomorrow, there is no time to waste. Sisters and brothers with a human race. Gotta live while we're living, gotta keep on loving. For the world we live in, gonna rise up above it. Gotta keep up the fight, yeah, we must unite. When we all get together, it's gonna be alright. 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 Got to get into it. We on borrowed time. People are ready. Yes, it's time to climb. Higher and higher for the good of the land. Every tree, all the seas, every grain of sand. Stronger and wiser in our hearts and our souls. Keep on pushing from the young to the old. Power to the people, we must all take a stand. So with divisions ain't a part of the plan. Gotta live while we're living, gotta keep on loving. For the world we live in, gonna rise up above it. Gotta keep up the fight, be alright. It's gonna be alright. Yeah, yeah, it's gonna be. It's gonna be alright. Alright. It's gonna be alright. You know it's gonna be. Alright. It's gonna be alright. Hey. It's gonna be alright. Oh yeah. It's gonna be alright. It's gonna be. It's gonna be alright. Alright. It's gonna be alright. Early in the morning. It's gonna be alright. Late in the evening. It's gonna be alright. In the midnight hour.
Thanks so much for revisiting this conversation with Quincy and Luqman from Season 1. Season 2 is right around the corner. Look for the first episode of Season 2 on February 9th. We'll be starting with a series of episodes that feature artists whose work focuses on or is inspired by the body. I've been learning so much from the episodes I've recorded so far, and I'm really hoping that you'll feel as inspired as I have. Thank you for all of the support of this podcast so far. Please continue to share it with your friends, and a 5-star rating on Apple Podcast or Good Pods is always very much appreciated.